Welcome back to Supreme Fuzzler. I'm doing another episode review of the Venture Brothers. This is episode 3 of season 1. It is Home Insecurity. The minions and honestly, the direction what this episode really shows us is going to be Underbite, who was mentioned in the first episode with Diodos Dangerous as the Rusty's possible major archenemy. This episode is really good because it portrays a major character for the next few seasons, and major characters and just fun characters in general, but also the dynamic. It really expounds upon the dynamic that will end up being with Rusty and Monarch. So let's jump into this episode, alright? So it opens up with an ominous castle, and then it has a guy, we don't know, minions, saying minions, and then we have what could be presumed to be Underbite, because he has a metal jaw, and his council of Underbite underlings, basically. They're having a meeting and drink about... Well, and he's asking them questions about, like, Catclops. What's, give me a report. And he's like, then there's, attendance has increased 100% since you demanded mandatory attendance to the murder mines, or murder wheel. And he's like, see, told you so. So, because if not, a dictatorial mandate is not, of course, going to make people go. They'll die otherwise. And then this other character that is a very, very intriguing character that I'm not surprised they kind of don't use as much in the late game, but I was always blown away by it. Girl Hitler. So she is like, in the child slave mines, we increased production. And there was dilly-dallying was up by 20%, but we stopped it by cutting off the feet of the alpha males and the papa little girls. I'm not good at a German accent, but basically it's an intriguing little bit about how cruel basically this guy is. And then they also have Manic 8-Ball, and he asks him how another project is going, and he does the whole shaking himself and his outlook good. It is a very weird but very interesting little beginning to this episode, which is very awesome. So this episode then flows. He's like, thank you guys for a good job. You all drank from my cup of villainy, perhaps too much, and you've all betrayed me. And I know all about the skimming from the top, which I think is from, like, it's interesting because I didn't notice this until after doing this reviewing and rewatching this episode a couple times. So it seems like Catclops is the one who's skimming from the top, taking money. The planned coup d'etat, which Girl Hitler is like, aw, and then the portraits and caricatures and rumors about me, which apparently Manic 8-Ball is responsible for. And he is like, but and so Underbite is like, I am a benevolent leader. I'm not gonna just, kill you. You can resign and it'll be all good. Check under your chairs to see a present. And the present, and they open up, it's like Tiger Balm, like for soothing balm for your skin. And Girl Hitler's like, maybe he's saying that we need to soothe, that he's no longer sore at us. Or he is sore at us and he has to soothe it with this. And that's stupid. Why would you do that? And his what Catclops is like. And he's gone and he's like, oh my god, he's gonna kill us. And then freaking Manic 8-Ball is like, signs point to yes. And then tigers show up and they're attacking them. And then fucking Underbite decides to just blow them up. And as the bomb's about to explode, Girl Hitler's like, "Oh, Tiger Bomb." And they explode, and manservants like, "You've eliminated every enemy of Underland in one fell swoop." And Underbine's like, "No, not everyone. There's still one remains. Venture." And then we get into the intro of the series. So it continues into Brock packing up, it looks like, and Rusty complaining about him leaving, even though apparently Brock's like, it happens the same time every year. And so he's gonna go no matter what. And Dean's like, "Have fun in your sabbatical," or some shit, and hey, from within the car is like, "Sabbatical, doofus," and he's like, "Oops." Brock like, "Nice try, man, get out of here." And then he tries to do a stupid fucking move where he like jumps out of the car but then hits his head really easily and falls out. I'm surprised he doesn't get bitched at from Brock for possibly hurting the car. But he's like, "That was a good move, boy. You're the man of the house now, though." And Rusty's like, "No, Brock." And then Brock just drives off. And then after he drives off and they cough from the smoke of his fucking 69 Charger, then Hank's all smiling, and Rusty's and Dr. Venture's like, "What are you smiling about?" And Hank's like, "Well, Brock said I'm the man of the house." And Dr. Venture's like, "So you think you're a big man now, huh? You think you're strong enough to take your old man down in a fight, huh? I knew this day would come. Come on, big man." Dean comes in like, "No, you're tearing this family apart. Ah! Aren't you proud of yourself, big man? You've made your brother cry. Look at what you're doing to this family." It's so stupid and bad, but really a brilliant scene and a flow of events. And it's great because it sets up the whole rest of this episode pretty well. And then it flows into Brock driving up to some army guys, what it looks like, on this mountain or some shit like that. And he's like, and they're like, "Sorry, sir, you have to go around." And he busts out his badass OSI fucking ID badge and is like, "I work for the government, Office of Secret Intelligence. What's going on here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting a routine, a civilian vehicle. But sir, if you just go over to the thing," he's like, "I'm here for some R&R, not a." Oh, that's right. He's like, "I'm gonna report it to the general." He's like, "I'm not here as an agent. I'm here as R&R." And it's like, "Sir, you can just go over the thing. Like, you saying I can't camp here, son? Really?" And the guy's like, "You serious? You're here to camp?" And then so Brock's like, "What's going on here?" Like, basically, "Why are you trying to keep me? You trying to keep me for something big?" And he's like, "Routine exercises." Just drives off in the fucking other direction. So fucking funny. And then another soldier though comes up and is like, "Dude, who was that? What was that?" And he's like, "Brock fucking Sampson. No way. Dibs on a cigarette butt." Such good jokes, and they flow so well and perfectly together. And I really enjoy the show for these jokes and how well, like, this episode really is the showcasing of some strong points that the series has to offer. Some of its best characters are used very well. Some of the more, like, even though they still use some of the tropes that they end up getting rid of, maybe, they still have a lot of stuff that really plays to the characters that they're going to have. And the relationship certain characters are going to have with every other character. All that kind of crap. Like, even, not to go back, but like, even the Hank being told by Brock that he's the man of the house kind of crap. That whole showing there shows that the dynamic between Brock and Hank is a little more big brother and little brother, or even uncle and nephew, or even father and son if you want to get weird, despite him already having a father. But essentially, Brock and Hank have a much more mentorship feelings towards each other with each other comparatively to Dean, for instance, and Brock, and that's really showcased in that little scene there. And the way that scene's played. That scene also really well shows Dean's fucking personality. How he, without any prompting, and without just because Rusty was being an asshole about a situation in which in reality he was just misunderstanding and also just overbearing and overblowing a situation that did not need to be done like that. And honestly, just misunderstanding Brock's desire to motivate and give something to him, Hank reacts harshly to the situation. And Dean freaks out, of course, because Dean's Dean. But that's the thing, Dean's Dean. This is the episode 3. We don't know that. Like, I'm a guy who would know that, but that's not necessarily developed at this point yet. This is the developing points that show what makes Hank Hank, what makes Dean Dean, why their relationship with Rusty, their father, the relationship with Brock, their second most talk to person, the bodyguard, and then the relationships with the, which is up yet to come, but it's coming, the relationships with villains and with each other, and as well as with Rusty. Yeah. Alright, and then it goes to Rusty being asleep, and I, like, kind of going off of what I was just saying, Helper is really played and expanded upon in this episode. So Helper comes in and picks Rusty up, takes him to bed, tucks him in, which then Rusty drops his schematics that he had in his hand on the floor, which says new robot. And so Helper freaks out and goes and, like, packs his lovely picture of young Rusty on his head and a bunch of bullcrap, and decides to go out like fucking old school transient hitchhiker style. And it's really weird and crazy, but also really interesting. After that though, with Rusty tucked into bed, we have the introduction finally again of the guild again. Not the guild, sorry. Sorry. Underlings. They show up. A underling shows up, and he puts a scorpion and goes to get to attack Rusty. And then it shows a Monarch crew member, obviously 24, the Ray Romano voice, who gets a spider to come out and to start trying to fuck with Rusty also. And then they have the whole scene where the spider and the scorpion get all the way up to the top of Rusty together at the same time. And then they're like, we're gonna fight. And then they start fighting on Rusty, and then Rusty freaks out, and then fucking button hits the fucking panic button and blasts his way down in the panic room, and also sends the boys into the panic room. Meanwhile, the underling has noticed the Monarch henchman, and so now they're like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, well, this is official underland business. I love, like, and then just fucking 24 just pushes him, just like a old, like, just straight up fucking, like, kid in the block style, and they start wrestling and, like, beating each other up straight up out of high school fucking fighting style. And it's really funny and great. Of course, with Rusty hitting the panic button, a bunch of gates fall everywhere, and so that there is no way into the building. Helper is seen leaving, and he kind of hears the stuff, I think, but he decides not to show up. And then fucking underling's like, what's this, to the gate, and 24 is like, out front, now. Straight up sounds like a mother telling a child to go out there. The scorpion and spider is still on Rusty, so fucking Hank freaks out and attacks Rusty with a fucking fire extinguisher. And then Dean stomps on the spider with his gravity boots that he's been wearing the whole episode, by the way. And fucking Hank sprays the scorpion with the goddammit fire extinguisher. And then they have the Underland people who are like, the bug people will leave. This is a official rules, official business of Underland. And fucking 21, who, this is the first introduction of the character 21, who's a kind of chubby guy, but obviously he's trying to chill. And he's like, God, these guys are total, like, just kind of posers. And then basically just like, listen to them. And 24's like, shut up. And like, alright, we have orders from Monarch in order to deal with this. Like, but we have orders to get his, like, spine or something. Like, don't tell outsiders the master's plan. So they decide, and so 24 is like, alright. We're gonna call our boss and see what we can get going. You clouds call your guy, and we'll figure it out. and they fucking underlings start and like do a circle talk, and they're like, okay, but not because you say so. So fucking funny. It's amazing scenes. Then it goes into Rusty kind of just moaning on the floor because they just got hit by a fire extinguisher, and they're like, oh god, is he dead? And they're like, no, there's venom probably, so we have to use a tourniquet to tie up his area where he had the bite. So Hank starts tearing off his fucking leg cloth, his clothes, his leg area of his clothes, and they're like, we gotta go get a first aid kit. And Dean's like, where are we? Like, I don't know, there's a door over there. And they're like, oh, we're right by the lab, it seems like. Excuse me. So he goes out to get the first aid kit. Then he kind of goes to use the eye wash station, I think. And then Gardo, the new robot, has appeared, which has Rusty's face. And it's like, intruder alert. And obviously, because he's there to attack. And going a threatening way towards the inventor, Dean's like, oh god, oh no, and then he pisses himself, which destroys, or circuits rather, the gravity boots that he had, and then makes him fall, which then barely dodges Gardo's attack. And then he runs all his way back to the panic room, and is like, it's a dad's face, and it's a robot, and it wants to beat me up. It's like in my dreams. Hank was like, did you get a first aid kit? Like, no! Excuse me. And Rusty, who woke up because Hank was trying to choke him because that's what he thought tourniquet stuff was, is like, I don't need a tourniquet, or I don't need first aid, I need you to stop trying to hurt me. And then they try to explain like what Gardo is. Excuse me. Well, before they explain what Gardo is, they do the whole, well, it's perfectly fine for men to lactate, or sometimes during stress. So because his nipples are all wet and stressful. And Dean's lactating too. He's pissed himself, goddamn. So funny and bad. And then, that's on my teeth. And after that, it flows into Monarch, who gets a phone call, and it has Dr. Girlfriend kind of being like, doing that thing that happens when you're on the phone call and someone's like, and like kind of starts talking, but you're like, whoa, stop, and then starts like going like, what? No, and you're like, stop, and you keep because you can only hear your side of the conversation. And he's like, underbite, that dick, we'll just slay him. You're like, what's the problem? Okay, no, I'll have to have it with an underbite. We're gonna have a sit down. You have to wait till then. Tells the henchman to wait. And then Dr. Girlfriend's like, what was that about? And he's like, get me underbite. Like, why? Like, just do it, woman. And he's like, do it yourself, big man. Monarch's like, fine. And then he's like, wait, how do I get an outside line? It's so, like, they do so dramatic and so crazy about it, even though it's really fucking just, you know, random and bullshit. After that, we cut into Brock. He's camping, chilling, sharpening his knife, fucking got some camo on his face. He's a badass motherfucker who, you know, you don't want to fuck with. And then you kind of see something trying to fuck with him. Not fuck with him, but he's like in the background and shit. And he's like, who's there? Identify yourself. And they don't, so he throws his knife and you can hear like, oh! And then Brock starts chasing it and you're like, okay, what the fuck? What's going on here? And then it cuts back to Rusty and crew. And, sorry, that's actually when he has to explain what Gardo is. Gardo is the robot that he built to protect them. And, of course, while Brock's away. And to, obviously, do all that stuff. But he fell asleep before he programmed in the friendly faces and names. Like Dean, Hank, and Rusty. And so Rusty tries to call Brock. Fucking Hank. Gardo. Does that stand for something? Yeah. And oh my god, I love the joke. So, Rusty's calling Brock, but unfortunately Brock's communicator's apparently in his glove box, so he's not, like, listening to it. And all you can hear Rusty say is, like, come on, Brock, it's an emergency. It's an emergency and I can't get to the fridge. So fucking funny. Like, Rusty's weird, overwhelming selfishness and weirdness is just so funny. After that, we go into the Monarch again. This time they have like party stuff. It's so fucking weird. And like a henchman tries to eat some chips, and she's like, "That's for the guests." And then one of my favorite jokes in the series, that's actually the most memorable, is right here. Where like, "Diet? How'd you get diet?" Like, I didn't. Like, drink this, and you drink the cup. I'm like, "Oh, I guess I got the wrong bottle at the supermarket." Who even does that? How do you even do that? It's like my dad's doing the shopping. It's so funny. I've actually, I don't know, I can't remember if I was the one, but like me and my fiance have had that scenario happen before, where one of us we grabbed for somehow the usually the zero sugar ones or some shit like that. That's the ones we usually grab. One moment. Okay. Oh man. So then they're like, he's late. Royalty, what you expect? And then he shows up. Well, he's not. They're like, oh my god, he's here. And they're like, places everybody. And then he shows up and he gets on an X, and then they do attack. They're like, now, and they attack, and they straight up, and Monarch fucking butterfly metal thing attacks him. He and shoots lasers at him. He blocks them, killing a bunch of henchmen. Destroys the thing, the Monarch butterfly thing. Throws a knife thing at Monarch. Monarch fucking pours his Diet Coke on it, destroying it. After he dodges it. Then they get all into their stances, and then they do like cut to one face, and then they cut to the other face, and then they cut to the other face, and then they cut to the other face, and it's just so funny. And I would highly recommend this episode just for that kind of that level of humor. Like, honestly, if everyone ever feels like it, by the way, Adult Swim's marathon runs all the time with Venture Brothers. Check it out. I mean, you may not get the first episode, but damn, this series has pretty much nothing but golden eggs. I can only think of 2 episodes, as I've said before, that are not just brilliant, and this episode is just brilliant. So they have that, and they're like, okay, fine, we'll stop. We tried. Whatever. And Dr. Girlfriend's like, is it over? Like, yeah, we can come out now. We're done. And so they're apparently gonna just go sit down. It's funny. And then they go to the henchmen, which 21 goes over to the underling side, and they're like, what are you doing? You're supposed to stay on your side. And he's like, well, we got some cases of beers, and we were thinking, and so they're gonna hang out and chill. And then it goes back to Brock, and Brock is chilling, searching for the Sasquatch. It looks like he finds the fucking straight up Bigfoot and is like fighting Bigfoot. But then you see this dude who has his eye is the scope kind of thing, and he does a whole like slow motion movement, obviously indicating that he's super fast. And that guy shows up and attacks Brock, and Brock kind of fucks him up by throwing a knife at him. And then he's like, oh, you're bionic, huh? Let's see how bionic. And then kicks him in the balls. And apparently he's not that bionic. And then Brock's like, oh, I know you. Because the dude had already said, I know who you are. You're Brock Sampson, an OSI agent. He's like, oh, I know you, too. You're Steve Summers, the astronaut. And he's like, I used to be. I got a crash, and then they had to repair me. And he's essentially he's the $6 million man. Mm-hmm. He was rebuilt by the government, and with $6 million worth of stuff. But as he explains, they wanted him to pay it all back. They expected him to pay it all back. And he, as he says, you know how long it takes to pay that $6 million on a government salary? So it's just so good. And they kind of also talk about how he and Sasquatch got together. Like, he found Sasquatch one day after working with them working for the government for a while, and fell in love, apparently. And so he couldn't do any other missions, and so he ran away with Sasquatch to try to fucking keep him, and to essentially to help him, I'm assuming. After that, it goes to Dr. Girlfriend showing Manservant, who is the second in command of Underbite, sorry. and they talking about the cells and the prison cells, and she's like, you must have much better prison cells over in your country, considering it's a country. And he's like, Underland has no prison cells. She's like, oh, well, how progressive. And he's like, he is deemed the death penalty for any offenses in Underland. And her face just kind of gets that, what the fuck? Okay. And kind of fucking look, and you know that, like, oh, okay. And so after that, you go into Underland and Underbite and okay. So then it goes to Underbite and Monarch having it out, like discussing the situation with Rusty, Dr. Venture, and Underbite's like, I've hated him since college. Like, you gotta let me have this. And Monarch's like, who hasn't hated him since college? What makes your deal so special? And Underbite's like, duh, and then points to his chin. So apparently, obviously, he believes, or at least right now, we are led to believe now, Dr. Venture's the one who caused that fucking chin problem, which is intense. And Monarch even is like, oh my god, he did that? Damn. Well, you can't just waltz in here, though, and claim king me when we're doing it during a whole high-stakes chess match. Me and Dr. Venture have been engaged in a cat and also cat game for years now. Let me show you my plan. And then he goes to his computer, which is 2004 computer, by the way. And they're like, oh, nope, that's my resume. And then they have a whole scenario where like, oh, okay, it's not working. Let me just reboot this. And they're waiting for it to reboot, and he's like, it's an outside line, or something like that. Like, and it's extension. He's like, it's on an extension. So funny. And a kind of dated reference, but really fun and works out really well. Also a great foreshadowing and showing of Underbite's own backstory and why he hates Venture, his whole scenario, and all that crap. Yeah. Okay. And then it gets back to their boys and Rusty, and they're kind of like, whatever, to Gardo, who keeps being like, intruder, and attacking them. And then they're like, Helper's a better robot than you. And Rusty's like, oh my god, Helper, you're right. Like, we should use him. And he calls in Helper, and Helper ignores him. And Rusty's like, the hell? And the boys are like, well, maybe he thought you were trying to replace him with a new robot. Because he has that kind of feelings. Like, Helper doesn't have feelings. And then they have flashbacks of how many times he's been like a fucking, obviously a robot with feelings. Like, whatever reason, this Helper is one of the more intelligent and truly feeling robots. And so Rusty calls him back and is like, apologizes and is like, Rusty needs you. And so Helper goes back, of course, because like, damn, deep moment. And then you have one of my favorite parts in the series too, which is the henchmen, the two sides of the henchmen talking about how they became part of part of the Monarch's crew and / the Underbite's crew, and how what their situations were. And so you start with 24, who's like, well, I got out of school and I wanted to not live with my dad, and it's either this or the army, and the Monarch is better than that. And that was really, so you get 24's kind of backstory. You get and then the counter from the underlings are like, you are forced to serve in the army from ages 15 to 37. At age 38, you are executed, which is so hardcore, Jesus. And then you have the one guy who's like, when I met the Monarch, I was hooked on crack cocaine, and I couldn't get any job at all. Monarch turned my life around. What about you? What made you join up? And then 21 is like, you guys kidnapped me when I was 15. It's kind of just the interesting different ways that this group came together and these henchmen come together. And then 24 breaks a fucking bottle and it's like, screw that, we're gonna go do some damage even though we can't get in there. Let's go fuck up his shit. And basically they're like, we're gonna go fuck him random shit. And then it goes back to Brock dealing with the Bigfoot situation, the Sasquatch, and Steve Summers, and how they're basically never gonna go back to their own to go back to the government how they're in love and that they have found each other no matter what. And then they hear a helicopter and are like, I'll never let them take you, baby. And then he's like, this might get ugly to Brock. And Brock's like, wait. Is this your bionicle arm? Yeah? Oh. Just fucks it up. God, he's so brutal. Don't worry though, bro. He's great. He's like, that was attached to my nerves. Like, don't worry. And he go, as for you, and he goes towards the Sasquatch with a knife, and of course the dude's like, whoa. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, henchmen are fucking TPing, graffitiing, pissing in the fucking pond, doing all sorts of nefarious and fucking vandalistic bullcrap to the Venture compound. Meanwhile, Rusty talks Helper through rebooting the system, which he does, and then Gardo does walk away. The fucking gates are opening as Gardo walks away. The henchmen go in and are like, yeah, we can fuck it up finally. And of course, Gardo is coming out to fuck up the fucking henchmen. And it's great, because Gardo just like, destroy intruders. And then, the last little bits are, Brock is leaving the place with a shaved Bigfoot and Steve Summers in a wig made out of shaved Bigfoot. And the guy who originally was the whole cigarette butt stuff says that to the other guy who's like, what? It's just some vets. Like, dude, did you not understand? And then fucking Steve Summers is like, you can drop it off at a bus station. Our fucking Sasquatch has some friends of family in Canada, so we'll try to go see them. And of course he has family in Canada. It's Sasquatch. And Brock's like, you could have told me that Sasquatch was a dude. What? Sasquatch doesn't have anything you haven't seen before. Sasquatch is something I've never seen before. Which is true. Sasquatch is a being creature that he's never ever seen before. So it's kind of funny to think about, like, I'm shaving this guy and I thought he wasn't a dude. And then you realize, oh, okay, he is. And then it's kind of, it's not weird. It's just weird. It's crazy. And then as Brock returns to his, right before Brock returns, they have Underbite and Monarch agreeing to a team up, and how they're gonna go do a team up, and where they're gonna call the henchmen and do that work. The one thing I want to mention here that's really important, in my opinion, is it's the Underbite's like, oh, should we not file a article of collusion with the Guild of Calamitous Intent, which is the first mention of the Guild of Calamitous Intent in the series. And they will be playing a major role throughout this series later on. And they're like, whatever, fuck protocol, we're not going to do that. So they call up the henchmen. Of course, no henchmen's answering, because everyone's either dead or wounded, because Gardo has slaughtered them all. Which then showing Brock showing back up and being like, the hell happened here? And then fucking running over Gardo? That's the part that doesn't make sense to me. Because he does. He runs over Gardo, and Gardo's all fucked up and destroyed. Why is Gardo destroyed? Did the henchman succeed in hurting him? Or was shaved Bigfoot is also the fucking... almost every credit scene has like a little like quote from the series there, and it's so funny. Then they use it a lot. And then the final scene is Helper not letting Rusty out, because of course he was still jealous of the new robot, and Rusty's like, I apologize, but Helper's like, no, not until you truly unlearn your lesson. Basically, you can only assume with Helper, but that's what you would assume he's saying there. So that's just how this episode goes. It's a little longer of a review, and I talked about it a little more, but I really enjoy this episode. It also has a few extra things. The character developments and the dynamics that we're going to get used to. The utilization of side villains that will be very used more. The use and consistent use and bringing in of Monarch, no matter almost what you do with other villains. And the Helper's character, Hank and Dean's character, Rusty's character. All of them are really built upon this episode. And Also, the introduction of Underbite, of course. The introduction of 21, who is one of my favorite characters, the henchman 21 from the Monarch crew, and the showing of Brock's stuff, OSI, like the first truly talking of OSI and the true talkings of Guild. All right, guys, thank you for joining this podcast. It's a little longer than I expected, but that's because, again, this episode is good. Home Insecurity, we'll be ending this here now. I hope you guys have a good day. This was Supreme Puzzler. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're on the YouTube. If you are not on the YouTube, check out the YouTube. It's Supreme Puzzler with you at YouTube, whatever the crap, I don't remember. I mean, Supreme Puzzler's the channel, but I don't think I have that URL. Anyways, goodbye.